Welcome to another week of NFL Power Rankings. Week 14 is over. Every team has now played their bye week, and now we just get to 4 weeks of important grudge matches and big football games. In this video, we're not only going to be doing the power rankings, but we're also going to be naming the biggest weakness for every team. So for your team down below, comment what you think your team's biggest weakness is, and let's get right into this one. Number 32, I have the New York Giants, and this team is obviously at rock bottom. You had the plane over the stadium before the game saying this team is a dumpster fire and they have to fix this, and that's true. But they're close to fixing it, and that's by getting the number one overall pick. And they did a pretty good job at playing a competitive football game just to lose it in the end on that blocked field goal. For biggest weakness, I'm just going to say the quarterback position because this team, if they didn't make a change at quarterback over this offseason, they would potentially only win one or two games again next year. So obviously they're going to improve on that, and the Giants stay at 32. And the second New York team in a row, this time it's the New York Jets at 31. And this week, Aaron Rodgers has one of his best games of the season, but it amounts to nothing as they lose in overtime. The defense couldn't make the stop when they needed to, and they let the Dolphins crawl back into the game, and the Dolphins take it. And for the Jets, once again, their biggest weakness is just their offense's consistency. Their offense has not been consistent the entire season, and it's kind of the same thing on the defensive side of the ball. They've never gotten a complete football game this entire year, and that's the biggest part to why they're 3-10 and why this experiment has failed, and the Jets are down 1-31. At number 30, I have the Las Vegas Raiders, and they lose another quarterback for the season. This time it's Aiden O'Connell. And this week against the Buccaneers, they played decent, but not good enough to get the win. And I'm pretty sure that's not really what the point of this Raiders season is at this point. Them and the Giants are racing for that number one overall pick to have the right to pick either Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. And although this season has not been great, you're getting a great year out of Brock Bowers. He's something you can build an offense around, and that's good to see. So Vegas here at number 30. At number 29, I had the Tennessee Titans, and them and the Jaguars played potentially the worst game of the season this past week, and the weakness of Will Levis just continues to show because he played terrible once again, and this offense could not get on the board, and this team had a good defensive game. This defense is honestly pretty good. It's just offense that has not been good whatsoever, and that's why Tennessee is 3-10 because the play of Will Levis has just not been where it needs to be for this team to succeed, and that's a big part why they're at number 29. At number 28, I have the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I just spoke about their game with the Titans. It was not good football, but the Jaguars get it done. They get their third win of the season with Mac Jones under center, which is a pretty unpredictable game for them. You didn't really expect to win with Mac Jones, and they do get the win. Defense obviously played great this past week, limiting the Titans to 6 points. For Jacksonville, I'm going to put their defense as the biggest weakness, though, just because they only play the Titans this week, and it's been their defense that has kind of cost them in big moments. And right now for Jacksonville, it's about potentially getting a player like Travis Hunter into the team and securing a good pick in this year's draft. So right now I have them at 28. 7, I have the New England Patriots, and they were on bye this past week, which was a much-needed bye for them. They were beginning to go on a bit of a slide going into that bye week, but before the bye week, you were seeing development out of Drake May and some of the young pieces on that team. And for the Patriots, that's the biggest point of this season. These last 4 games, they do not need to win. It just matters if they see improvement out of Drake May going into his next year, which will be his first full year starting, even though he's had the starting job for pretty much half the season. And New England, another team that would like a Travis Hunter because their receiving core is their biggest weakness, and they could always use an extra corner as well, and Travis Hunter gets that done. So New England on bye, but development is the biggest point of the 2024 season. At number 26, I have the Chicago Bears, and this team has lost a seventh game in a row. This team really, it went wrong on that Hail Mary play. I'll continue to say it week in and week out. But this week, they just got absolutely destroyed by a 49ers team that was used to getting destroyed, and now the Bears get destroyed. This team, obviously, their biggest weakness was coaching, and they're going to get a new coach. I would be on the lookout for them for a guy like Ben Johnson, or again an experienced coach like Mike Vrabel who can get it done and bring a group of players together. But Chicago, they're also seeing some better play out of Caleb Williams. Although this week in the first half he did not really play that well, he's beginning to play a lot better over the second half of the season, although they're losing games. And that's what you like to see out of Chicago and what is a lost season. So I have them at 26. I have the Cleveland Browns, and this team played another close game with the division rival. This time they're on the losing side of it. And Cleveland, their biggest weakness for the entire beginning of the season was Deshaun Watson. And now that Jameis Winston is playing decent with that offense, it's kind of clear that he was the problem. So I don't know where Cleveland goes from here, but I would likely see Cleveland make a addition to the defensive side of the ball, or they add a receiver, because I think they're one or two more skill players away from getting back to contention. But great play out of the Browns these last couple weeks, even though the record is not really to show for it. So I have them at 25. Another team that their record really doesn't show how they've been playing is the Carolina Panthers. They're 3-10, but they've been playing extremely close games with some of the top teams in the NFL. Bryce Young's reemergence has really been fun to see. He likely beats the Eagles this week if Leggett doesn't drop the pass in the end zone wide open. And Bryce Young really has been a top 15 quarterback in the league these last couple weeks, which is good to see if you're a Panthers fan. And what's up next for them is getting that guy a weapon. They have Leggett, they have Adam Thielen. He's aging though, so you're going to have to get a piece like a Travis Hunter on the team. And Carolina is in the best case scenario because their quarterback is beginning to play well, but they're still losing games and still getting towards a good pick. So Carolina, good job done, and they are looking really good at 24. Rounding out the bottom 10 is the New Orleans Saints. And New Orleans, they win this week, but they lose Derek Carr for what seems to be the remainder of the season. And that was kind of the beginning of the fall of the season when he got hurt the first time. They could not do anything offensively with Spencer Rattler or Jake Haener in there. So that's obviously their biggest weakness for the remainder of the season. And that was a win that kept their season alive. They're only 2 games back in the division. And if they get some good results down the stretch, they could have gotten back into it. But without Derek Carr, I don't really see that happening. And that's why they're this low at 23. At number 22, I have the Dallas Cowboys. And what a sad way to lose for them this week on that punt play that ends up going in the Bengals' favor. And that loss basically seals the deal for what has been a terrible season for them. They are now 5-8, and pretty much it will take a miracle to get back into the playoff picture. When a win last night could have done the job to get back into the playoff picture, but CeeDee Lamb is continuing to play absolutely amazing. You have Rico Dowdle emerging as a good running back option. You lose DeMario Overshown for the rest of the season, and he's been looking like a breakout player for that defense. And I'm going to say the weakness is Dallas's defense, and I believe that's where they're going to go in the draft, because I would have said running back a few games ago, but with the breakout of Rico Dowdle, it's beginning to look like the Cowboys will make a defensive addition in the draft. But for Dallas, it's about possibly just securing a good pick or just competing in games for the rest of the season. So Dallas at 22. Cincinnati gets back in the win column. They're at number 21 this week in the power rankings, and largely apart due to the play of Jamar Chase. He has another incredible day, and he is the best wide receiver in the NFL, and last night showed it. He gets the game-winning touchdown. Joe Burrow has yet another good game, and it's kind of a shame because last night showed what this duo can do and why this duo should be playing playoff games this year. But it's obvious Cincinnati's defense is their weakness because there were several plays in that game where their defense should have made the stop and they don't, especially on a touchdown early to CeeDee Lamb. It just kind of looked like they gave up on the play. And Cincinnati, if their defense could pick it up, maybe they can go on a late season run, but at this point, I don't think it would be enough. At number 20, I have the San Francisco 49ers, and the 49ers get a huge win for their chances this season as they move from 5-7 to 6-7 with the win over the Bears. And they lost McCaffrey and Mason for the season. Isaac Guerendo had a great week in his move to the RB1 role. The defense, they have their injuries, but they made the key plays to stop the Bears this week. And their big game is upcoming against the Rams this week. If they lose that one, it is likely over for this season. If they win, they are right back into not just the playoff picture, but the NFC West picture. Their biggest weakness, I would say right now, is their defensive injuries, but they can definitely get over it. And San Francisco is a team that's proven they can win big games. So they're up at number 20. At number 19, I have Atlanta, and I'm going to get right into their biggest weakness. Their biggest weakness is Kirk Cousins. I would not have said that a few weeks ago when they were leading the division by multiple games. Now they're a game back, and it's largely in part to that Kirk Cousins has thrown 0 touchdowns and 8 interceptions in the last couple weeks, and that is terrible. It's cost Atlanta their season. It's not completely over yet, but this week is potentially a week where if they lose and Tampa Bay wins, this chance to make the playoffs is an extreme long shot. And it's a shame because this Atlanta team is talented on both sides of the ball. It's just they fell flat these last couple of weeks. Just they were in it early against Minnesota, but they fell apart late, and their defense didn't do a good job in helping this team either. And just what a shame on what Atlanta seemed to be early on this season. At number 18, I have the Arizona Cardinals, and the Cardinals lose another key matchup to the Seahawks, and that's become a theme of their last couple weeks because they've lost twice to the Seahawks, and quickly they lost that division lead and are now down by 2 games in the NFC West, and practically 3 because of the tiebreaker. So Arizona, it looked very good after their bye week, but what I said when their bye week happened was that it came at a bad time because of the amount of momentum they developed. It was true because they've lost every game since coming out of that bye week and now have a losing record. For Arizona's biggest weakness, I would say it's run defense, and it showed because Zach Charbonnet ran all over them in that game. And for Arizona, from here on out, they probably are playing for their season at this point, but what a shame the way Arizona had played before their bye week, but now that's all gone. Next is the Indianapolis Colts, and they're going into the biggest game of their season as they take on the Broncos this upcoming week. And a key part of that is which Anthony Richardson are we going to get? If you get the Anthony Richardson that doesn't turn the ball over and uses his legs effectively, the Colts will win this game. But if you get the Anthony Richardson we've gotten for most of this season, which is turnover heavy, doesn't complete most of his passes, then the Colts are easily going to lose this game and practically end their season. And that's what their biggest weakness is, and that's what their biggest what if is. Because if Anthony Richardson gets going, this team will get going and potentially make a run towards the playoffs. But we don't know what we're going to get, and that's why he is the biggest question mark, and I have them at 17. Next is the Miami Dolphins. I have them moving up a couple spots with a huge comeback win to stay in the playoff picture. And Miami, it's pretty clear. Their offense can get it done. It's whether their defense can play consistently enough to get them what they need to win games down the stretch. And at 6-7 right now, Miami is likely going to need to win 3 or all of their games to make the playoffs. And if their defense plays good in those games, Miami can definitely make a run and sneak in because of the play of players like Tua and Tyreek Hill, who have been playing pretty well these last couple of games. So Miami moves up a couple spots to 16. I did not see what the LA Rams did on Sunday coming whatsoever. I didn't expect for their offense to explode for 44 points and beat the Buffalo Bills, who were on a 7-game win streak going into that game. Puka Nacua played amazing. Cooper Kupp played amazing. Kyren Williams played amazing. Matthew Stafford played amazing. This offense is good enough to beat pretty much anybody, and it was proven by their win over the Bills this past weekend. The problem is their defense going to play good enough in a potential important game down the line here, especially in a game against the Niners where this team has pieces like Deebo Samuel, like Jawan Jennings, that the Rams are going to need to stop. And let's see if they can do it. But right now, I have them moving up a couple spots to 15. The revival of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers has been fun to watch. At 4-6, their season looked on the line a couple weeks ago, and they have won 3 games in a row, taken the lead in the NFC South, and look to be on track to make the postseason. And it's largely in part to the play of Baker Mayfield over these last couple of games. He's limited the turnovers, and he's been making great plays for this Tampa Bay team, and they look to win the division once again. The problem with them is Baker Mayfield and turning over the ball, because that was a large part of why they were losing games early on, is because Baker was throwing a lot of interceptions. But now that he's limited the turnovers, this Tampa Bay team looks good and potentially looks like they can win a playoff game down the road this year in the playoffs. So Tampa Bay, they've won 3 in a row. They're on a roll, and they're looking really good. The Los Angeles Chargers drop a spot to number 13, and for them, their defense is an elite unit. Their defense is definitely top 10 in the league, and they limited a good Kansas City offense to only scoring 19 points. The problem is that their offense is not really scoring like how they would need to win playoff games. They haven't really been scoring much at all, and that's going to be a problem down the road. That's why I think their biggest weakness is their offensive consistency, because they haven't scored over 20 points in a couple games now, and they got lucky when they played the Falcons last week, and this week was a very winnable game against Kansas City. So for LA, now that they're pretty much destined to be a wild card team, if they can just get it done, it's just, can they beat a division-winning team on the road with their offense scoring points and their defense playing the way they usually do. So they're at 13. At number 12, I have the Washington Commanders, and they were on bye this past week, and I dropped them a couple spots just because of teams winning around them. But for Washington to finish the job and get into the playoffs, it's largely about Jaden Daniels playing the way he did those first couple weeks and regaining that offensive rookie of the year lead that he had at one point. And as well as the defense is going to need to make stops, and against good teams, they're just going to need to play a complete football game. And that's my biggest concern, is are they going to get an all-around performance from Washington in a important game? So that's why I have them at 12. At number 11, I have the Houston Texans, and for them, they were also on bye this past week, and my concern with them is the play of C.J. Stroud. He's looked inconsistent for most of this season, and if they get the C.J. Stroud that down the stretch last year was absolutely amazing, then this Texans team is going to win playoff games. They can clinch the AFC South this week, and that's going to do a big part for them because they're going to have less pressure. They're going to basically know that they're going to be that 4 seed in the AFC, and I'm interested to see how the Texans can gain momentum down the stretch, especially with Nico Collins playing the way he was once he came back. Houston is definitely a team to watch, and I have them at number 11. Welcome back to the top 10, Seattle Seahawks, as I have them at number 10, and they've won 4 in a row. Their season looked to be heading in the wrong direction once they were 4-5, and now they've won 4 in a row. They're 8-5, have a full game lead in the NFC West, and they're getting complete play on both sides of the ball. Their defense is making key turnovers. Their offense is getting key plays and key touchdowns. Honestly, their biggest concern right now is special teams. I go back to that game against the Jets. They almost lost because of their special teams, and if they seem to have that fixed up, the Seattle team is going to be more dangerous than people think because the way they played the last 4 games, proven that they could potentially win a playoff game in the playoffs, and Seattle's going to get a big test when they host Green Bay this Sunday night. So I have them at number 10. At number 9, I have the Denver Broncos, and they were on bye this past week, but they go into a game against the Colts. The Colts are 8th in the AFC right now, and if the Broncos win this game, they are practically set on making the postseason this year. It's can they get it done down the stretch? Their biggest weakness is probably their offensive performance. No doubts to Bo Nix's ability, but their offense did not play so great to open the season. And if you get that offense in a playoff game, Denver will likely get blown out. So if Denver can get that offensive consistency, then this team will be more dangerous than people think. So I have them at number 9. At number 8, I have the Green Bay Packers. They played a great game against the Detroit Lions, where Jordan Love looked pretty good and Josh Jacobs continues to play well, but they fall just short. And for me, the Packers are a team that if Jordan Love doesn't turn over the ball, this team is going to make a lot of noise come January because they played another close game with the Lions, and if a couple things go their way, they win that game. If they play the Lions again down the road, they can definitely win. And that's why I think Green Bay is very dangerous. If Jordan Love holds onto the football, doesn't throw any interceptions, and they get the play they got against San Francisco, Miami, and in that Detroit game. Baltimore is up next at number 7. And Baltimore, if they get complete defensive play week in and week out, and especially in the postseason, Baltimore is going to make a lot of noise. You obviously have Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, one of the most elite rushing attacks in the league, and they are going to put up points no matter what happens. It's if the defense can make stops against teams like the Steelers and the Chiefs and the Bills, the top of the AFC, because the Ravens are going to finish second in the AFC North, and they're probably going to be the 5 seed. It's can they stop those teams in big games, and that's how the Ravens are going to do well in the playoffs, and that's why I have them at 7. At number 6, I have Pittsburgh. This team can clinch a playoff spot this week because they're surpassing pretty much everybody's expectations the way they are playing this year. Their defense is complete. Their offense is beginning to show up in big ways. And if their offense keeps playing like that, this Pittsburgh team could potentially go on a run this year. It's do they get that offense or do they get an offense that is not so great? And that's their biggest question mark going into the playoffs. This team is going to have a home playoff game. They're going to win the AFC North. And if I'm a Steelers fan, I'm feeling pretty confident the way they are playing right now. And they are a top 6 team in the NFL. Dropping a couple of spots, I have Buffalo. Their win streak comes to an end and they lose to the Rams in a game where Josh Allen basically proved to the world that he is the MVP of the NFL this season. 6 combined touchdowns, over 400 all-purpose yards, and Josh Allen is on a different level right now. The problem is that loss basically sealed their fate as a 2 seed because I don't see Kansas City slipping up more than once. And Buffalo's biggest problem was unveiled in that game, and it's that their defense is not as great as many people thought it would be. If they get that performance in the playoffs, they potentially could be a shock one and done. If they get the defense that we were used to seeing for most of the season, Buffalo can easily win the Super Bowl this year. And it's going to be intriguing to see what Buffalo defense we get in these last couple weeks of the season. So I have them at number 5. At number 4, I have the Minnesota Vikings, and they just continue to win. They are now 11-2, and nobody, and when I mean nobody, I mean nobody would have saw that coming going into the season. Sam Darnold's been playing out of his mind. Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison both had great games. Aaron Jones gets into the end zone, and just a complete football game all around. It's like Jordan Love and Baker Mayfield, it's Sam Darnold not turning over the ball. That's the biggest danger for this team come playoff time. He had a couple weeks where he was turning it over, and they almost lost to some bad football teams. And he's been playing pretty good against these good teams. But if you get a performance like that against a good team, they potentially lose in the playoffs. But Minnesota, there's not much to be upset about the way they're playing, and that's to be honored because they're 11-2. Philadelphia Eagles escaped the Carolina Panthers. They're now number 3 in these rankings, and Saquon Barkley is going to likely break the record this season. He has been the best free agent signing in recent years for potentially the NFL, because this is potentially the piece that gets Philadelphia over the hump and wins them a Super Bowl. The biggest question mark is Jalen Hurts has been playing not great at all the last couple of games. Another game where he doesn't even break 150 yards, and there's beginning to be tension between him and his receivers. And for a Philadelphia team that's been incredible since week 5 of the season, that's not what you want to be seeing, considering this Philadelphia team is definitely in contention to win a Super Bowl. Any tension in the locker room potentially prevents that from happening. But I wouldn't be worried if I'm the Eagles, and they're looking very good at 11-2, and they're number 3. Kansas City must be using magic or something at this point, because they continue to play some of the worst football they can possibly play, but they're 12-1, and that's what good teams do. They just continue to win games when they don't deserve it, and this Kansas City team has not looked like the best team in the AFC, yet they're going to be the number 1 seed, which is pretty astounding if you ask me. Patrick Mahomes doesn't have a good game again. This defense is really what's saving them, because they're only allowing 17 points a game in recent games. And the biggest question mark is, honestly, at this point, Patrick Mahomes and that offense. If their offense doesn't show up against the Bills again, then they're probably losing to the Bills. And at this point, that could happen against the Steelers too. So for the Chiefs, it's just more offensive consistency, and this team will undoubtedly have a very good chance to go back to back to back. Remaining at number 1, we have the Detroit Lions, and they beat another good football team this week. They beat the Packers in what was a high-scoring game. And honestly, with all of the injuries on their defense, I was expecting a bit worse of a performance, but their defense played great. They were getting to Jordan Love in that game, but with the amount of injuries they have, that's their biggest concern at this point. Their offense is the best run offense in the league. If their defense gets through the injuries, this Lions team will have no problem running through the NFC and potentially winning the Super Bowl. And for Detroit, they're definitely the favorite at this point. But that is going to do it for this week's Power Rankings. If you liked them, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, share with your friends, and be on the lookout for the Week 15 preview. And I will see you guys in that video.